Hi everyone, welcome back to our This Is How We Grow personal growth group. I am Dr. Christina Hibbert or Christy Hibbert. I'm grateful to be with you today to talk about our 7th lesson on love of God and ourselves. Last time we talked a little bit about love and relationships, and today we're going to shift that focus of love and extend it a little bit more so that we can get a little more in depth about how to love ourselves and to receive love from our higher power. If you're just joining us for the first time, we welcome you and we hope that you will visit our Facebook group and ask to be added so that you can join the discussion that we have on there. We hope that you will also go back and visit all these other lessons 1 through 6, to kind of catch up on some of the things. But if this is your first lesson, well, welcome. We hope you enjoy it and we hope you stick with us as we continue on in this lesson and 2 more to go for this first season of our personal growth group. Today, like I said, we're going to focus on love again. And I want to remind you of the definition that we gave last time for love, which is by M. Scott Peck, which I included in my book, This Is How We Grow. And it's my favorite definition of love. M. Scott Peck wrote this in his famous long ago book, The Road Less Traveled. It's really still a wonderful book. And this is what he says. He says, I define love thus. Love is the will to extend one's self for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. So love is the will for us to extend ourselves for the purpose of nurturing our own or somebody else's spiritual growth. I love that definition because it applies a few things. Number one, that love is more than just an emotion or a feeling, that it is an action. It is something we do, something we can do out into the world. It is also an emotion, something that we can feel, but really true, pure love, the kind we're talking about here, is something that comes from deep within us and something that we go out and share with the world. I also love this definition because it talks about us nurturing our spiritual growth. It doesn't say our physical growth or emotional growth or intellectual growth. And to me, this focuses love on a little bit broader than just on the things that we can see with our eyes. In fact, the spiritual growth to me means all of the parts of ourselves that we don't necessarily see with our eyes, including our mind, including our thoughts and our feelings, and who we really are, and our self-worth, and all of these things. So if we're nurturing our own and others' spiritual growth, we are choosing to grow like we've been doing in this group. And that's the whole point of this group, is that we all are here because we believe in growing through life, no matter what life hands us. Whether we're in a season of fall or a season of change, whether we're in a season of winter, a season of summer, a season of spring coming out and emerging into summer, wherever we are in life, that we're always choosing to grow and to take the lessons that life hands us and try to learn them and to keep on developing ourselves. And today we're really going to talk about self-development as we talk about self-love and self-worth. Now, self-love can be really tough for most of us, and that's why I think it's such a big topic. There's a lot of interest on the internet, in books, in seminars and webinars, and from experts all about this topic. Really what they call it is self-esteem, and some people call it self-love. And we're going to focus in on a little bit more about self-love, but why do you think it is that self-love is such a difficult topic? I mean, think about that. And take a moment and just kind of think about for yourself, is self-love ever a challenge for you? Have you ever struggled with self-love in any way? Now, in my book, This Is How We Grow, if you've read it, you know this, and if you haven't, I'll just fill you in. You know, it shares my story of a really hard time in my life, and the seasons I went through of the fall and the change when my sister and brother-in-law died and we inherited my nephews, and I had a baby, and all of a sudden we went from 3 to 6 kids, to the winter time when I was feeling very overwhelmed and depressed and not sure what was going on with me and very grief-stricken, trying to find my way. And then my spring season when I felt like I wanted to be emerging and feeling better and healing, and I would try, and then I'd sort of retreat, and I'd go and I'd try again and sort of retreat, as we've talked about spring to be. And finally my summertime when I finally felt like I was well again and was able to start really believing in myself and sharing what I have to offer with the world and engaging in those things that are part of my life's purpose. Now, in the book, I share these experiences, and the subtitle of the book it includes the words in discovering self-joy. I'm discovering self-worth. It says, a psychologist's memoir of loss, motherhood, and discovering self-worth and joy. That's why I said it that way. And the reason why I included those words is because to me, this really is my story of discovering self-worth. And if you've read it, you understand what I mean. I have so many times where I just doubt myself. And before I felt like a very confident person. I felt like I was successful, like I could achieve. But I think I was caught up before in this idea of self-esteem. I was out there. To me, self-esteem is this kind of outward thing that we go and try to get. We try to get self-esteem. We do things to make us feel successful, and we engage in behaviors that make us feel good about ourselves, and we try to think positively so that we can love ourselves and like ourselves, and those things are all good. It's just that self-esteem really isn't the way to go. And like I say, if we're only pursuing self-esteem, we're missing the mark because we're failing to dig deeper to our self-worth. So we've talked about joy and love and how joy and love aren't out there. They aren't things to go be found outside. They are things that they are part of who we are. They are a natural part of who we are, of our spirit, of our soul. They're part of us. And instead of going out and trying to build joy and find joy out in the world or find love, go and get it for ourselves, we have to just dig down and discover it within ourselves. We're sort of trying to remove all the stuff that piles up on top of it and feel it. And that is what self-worth is like. To me, self-worth is that experience of digging down and removing, just like joy and love. And joy and love are part of our self-worth. And we feel that innate capacity that we have for our potential and to be worthy and valuable, that innate part of us. That's just who we are. It's our soul. It is who we are. It's our self-worth. Versus self-esteem, which is that thing that we go out and pursue. So if that makes sense. And I've written about this on my website, 5 reasons self-esteem is a myth, and some other ones on self-esteem versus self-worth. So you can check out those. I define self-worth as the ability to comprehend and accept my true value. So first I want to accept and comprehend. First I want to become aware and accept, or become aware and comprehend my true worth and value. And then I need to accept it, which we're going to talk about today, self-acceptance. To understand I am more than my mind, body, emotions, and behaviors. So there's more to us than what we think or do or feel or say or how we are in the world or how we look or how successful we are or are not. To see myself as God sees me. Now that's a tough one. Do we see ourselves as this really innately gifted, talented, beautiful person that has all this potential in our own different ways? Of course, everybody's not the same. We don't all have the same gifts and potential. But again, as we talked about strengths and weaknesses before, do we see our strengths and weaknesses, and are we able to accept those and to accept that God sees us? In God's eyes, we all are these amazing, beautiful, loving children of His. So to see myself as God sees me, to accept His love for me. Can we accept that God or your higher power or whatever you call that God loves us tremendously and that He has great, great hope for us and love for us, and all we have to do is open up and receive it, and to learn to love myself in like manner. That's a long definition, but to me that's what self-worth is all about. We're trying to do all of those things, and it's all about digging down and just really feeling and opening and let ourselves be who we are and uncovering who we really are and embracing it, and we're going to talk more about that later. So that's what that's our focus for today, but let's start talking about love of self and maybe some of the reasons why it can be difficult for some of us. I'm going to read a little bit today, well actually quite a few things from this lovely little book, The Art of Loving by Eric Fromm, which is a really old book. I'm not sure exactly when it was published, but it's been around a long, long time, 1956, and it's just his theories on love and different capacities of love. And I want to read a little bit for our discussion today to give you a new perspective. And I hope by the time you leave today, you have a new perspective on self-love and God's love that maybe you didn't have before. And I hope you take at least 1 or 2 things that are important for you, because the point of this group is for everybody to get something that's applicable to themselves. So find that thing for you as you listen today. So to start, the affirmation of one's own life, happiness, growth, freedom is rooted in one's capacity to love, i.e. in care, respect, responsibility, and knowledge. So he's saying our ability to have life, happiness, growth, and freedom is rooted in our ability to love. That's why we're talking about this today. That's why loving is so important, why we talked about love last time and loving other people. Then he says, if an individual is able to love productively, he loves himself too. If he can only love others, he cannot love at all. Now think about that. If we can only love others, we cannot love at all. I know this to be true because as a psychologist, I've seen over and over, I learned this for myself, and then I've read the research on it, and I'm right now writing a book on self-esteem and self-worth, and it's very clear to me that we cannot love other people until we love ourselves. You cannot give what you don't have. So when we say we love other people but we don't love ourselves, we're always going to be holding something back because we can only give them as much as we give ourselves. And that's what he's saying here. In fact, he says that if we only love others and not ourselves, then we're really not loving at all. Let me get a little bit more into that. Let me shift over and talk a minute about motherly love and his thoughts on motherly love. And if you're a mother, this is really going to apply to you. If you're a father, you can certainly relate. If you ever plan to be a mother or father, or if you've ever mothered other people, I'm sure you can relate in some way. And it also applies to each one of us as individuals, whether you're a parent or not. So, what he says about motherly love. Motherly love is unconditional affirmation of the child's life and his needs. Okay, we would agree on that motherly love is unconditional affirmation of your child's life and needs. Now think about this. If you're not a parent, you can also think about your own parents, or you can think about it both ways. Did your mother give you motherly love? Were you able to receive that? So you can think about it in terms of your own parents and you, or as you with your children, both ways. Okay, but one important addition to this description must be made here. Affirmation of the child's life has two aspects. One is the care and responsibility absolutely necessary for the preservation of the child's life and growth. The other aspect goes further than mere preservation. It is the attitude which instills in the child a love for living, which gives him the feeling it is good to be alive. It is good to be a little boy or girl. It is good to be on this earth. Now, think about that. There are two aspects to a mother's love, or parent's love, let's say. One is the basic needs for care to keep us alive and healthy. The other is instilling in us a love for life, instilling in us something that goes beyond just preserving our life on this earth, but to have a love for living, to feel good about ourselves, to feel good to be alive. And to me, this has a lot to do with our sense of self-worth. So some of us might have received that from our parents, from both of those kinds of love. But some of us might have only got the care without the other. And let me explain this a little bit more. He says, motherly love makes the child feel it is good to have been born. It instills in the child the love for life and not only the wish to remain alive. Now, think about that for yourself. Do you have a love for life, or are you simply wishing to remain alive? There's a difference, right? There's a big difference. So we can look at ourselves too, and hopefully in this group we work on overcoming, becoming, and flourishing. So we go beyond just the overcoming, saying, okay, well, I guess I'm fine to stay alive, to becoming who we need to be until we get to the point of, I really love life. I really love life. And that's what we're going to kind of hopefully get from today is, how do we work on that? How do we develop that for ourselves? He gives a really interesting metaphor here from a biblical standpoint, where he talks about the promised land in the Bible and how it talks of it's spoken of as being a land flowing with milk and honey, right? We've all heard of this before. And he says milk is a symbol for mothers. Milk is a mother symbol and love, and it's a symbol of mother's care and that, like mothers feeding their children milk, that care and responsibility of the basic needs of life. So milk can represent that, but honey symbolizes the sweetness of life, the love for it and the happiness in being alive. So he says most mothers or parents are capable of giving milk, but only a minority of giving honey too. Do you feel like you got milk and honey when you were being raised? Are you a parent who's giving milk and honey to your child now if you're a parent? Think about this as we continue to discuss. In order to be able to give honey, a mother must not only be a good mother, but a happy person. And this aim is not achieved by many. And I can tell you, I've worked with mothers for years now. I've been in practice for over 15 years. And even before that, I specialized in helping mothers in my undergraduate work. And I think a lot of mothers believe it's okay to not be happy. That as long as we're taking care of our kids and we love our kids, and I hear this all the time, I love my children, I love my family, but I don't love myself. and I will do anything for them. I'll give them anything. But again, they're only giving milk. If they don't love themselves, if they don't have that love for life, they are not giving honey. So again, we ask ourselves, did we receive that from our parents? And are we giving that to our children or to those in our life? He goes on, the effect on the child can hardly be exaggerated. Mother's love for life is as infectious as her anxiety is. Both attitudes have a deep effect on the child's whole personality. One can distinguish indeed among children and adults those who got only milk and those who got milk and honey. Isn't that true? The adults who were raised with milk and honey have a stronger sense of self-worth and self-love and a love for life. You can only, again, you can't love life unless you love yourself. You can't love others unless you love yourself. You can't really love God unless you love yourself too. So that love of ourself is where it all starts. And that's one point I really hope that especially the mothers out there do hear, because like I said, I think this is particularly true for mothers, but I think it's particularly true for most of us. For a lot of women especially, and yes, men too. Okay, so think about those things as we continue to discuss a couple other points here. One other thing to add, he says, if one has a chance to study the effect of a mother with genuine self-love, one can see that there is nothing more conducive to giving a child the experience of what love, joy, and happiness are than being loved by a mother who loves herself. There is nothing more conducive to raising a child who is full of that love and has joy in their life and feels self-worth than by being raised by a mother who loves herself. Again, were you raised by a mother or father who loved themselves or not? If not, you probably have more work to do when it comes to self-love and self-worth. If so, you're lucky. You were given a great head start, and now we ask, are we passing that on to the next generation? Okay. Now, a lot of people, especially women again, mistakenly believe that self-love is selfish. That if we love ourselves, then we're just being selfish. And I'm about to prove that wrong. I already knew that was not true. Selfishness is not self-love. They're not the same thing. They can't be, we need to love ourselves. And in fact, it's selfish not to love ourselves because we can't give until we receive. Again, what we don't have, we can't offer. But again, Eric Fromm discusses this. He says, selfishness and self-love, far from being identical, are actually opposite. The selfish person does not love himself too much, but too little. In fact, he hates himself. So if you feel like you're being selfish, you're actually hating yourself. When you love yourself, it's the opposite. You're actually taking care of yourself. It's not selfish at all. He says, he seems to care too much for himself, but actually he only makes an unsuccessful attempt to cover up and compensate for his failure to care for his real self. It is true that selfish persons are incapable of loving others, but they are not capable of loving themselves either. Okay, so hopefully we understand that self-love is important. And now I just want to kind of switch into this topic of self-worth. We talked about self-esteem and self-worth, and now we're going to get into how to feel self-worth. And I've put a lot of resources on my website, a lot of blog posts related to today's lesson that you can go and get tools from those. In fact, in every blog post related to self-worth and this pyramid of self-worth we're going to talk about today, for every one of those, there's a section at the bottom that says, tools for building self-worth. And it gives you some exercises exactly written out, exactly what you can do. So there are lots of good resources for this topic, especially on my website at drchristinahibbert.com. Okay, let's talk now about self-worth. I described earlier how in my book, This Is How We Grow, how I went through this really tough time where I was really struggling to feel my true worth and to really feel good enough. And I think a lot of us have those times in our life, and they come and go, and it's kind of a process that we have throughout our life of trying to figure out who we really are and feel love for ourselves. And I was experiencing those same things. I wasn't sure how I felt about myself. I wasn't feeling it. And I realized that I was before maybe trying to be this perfect daughter, perfect mother, perfect wife, perfect person, be successful and achieving. And I was killing myself. I was burning myself out trying to be this person and get that self-esteem for myself. And I felt like a confident person before. But suddenly I found myself going, who am I? And why do I feel so low? And why am I struggling so much? And that's when I really, really discovered my true worth. I knew I I knew it in my head before, and I had felt it before, and certainly I'd been given some of that in the way that I was raised, but I really, really had to go through this process of discovering self-worth. And again, it made me wonder, how do I help someone who doesn't feel their worth to really discover and feel that inside of themselves when they don't feel it, or they've never been taught how to do that? And so this was a time when I really developed my theory, the pyramid of self-worth. And this is my theory for how to feel self-worth. And I've done several shorter YouTube videos on this on my YouTube channel, so you can check those out if we don't get into it, enough of it here. But just briefly, I want to explain this pyramid, and then you can also check out the blog posts. I've got a series of 5 blog posts that you can check out on my website that discuss these different steps of the pyramid of self-worth. So this is my way to feel your true worth and value. Again, we talked at the beginning about what self-worth is. It's that feeling, touching deep into ourselves to feel that we are more than what we see on the outside, that we are loved by God, and receiving that and loving ourselves. And there are 3 layers that lead to the top of the pyramid of self-worth, which is self-worth, feeling your self-worth. So that's our ultimate goal, and we're trying to build our way up. Number 1 is, the first layer is self-awareness. And self-awareness is just letting ourselves see who we really are, to see all of the parts of ourselves. We've talked a little bit in the past about being able to identify your strengths and weaknesses. And hopefully you've done some of that and been kind of keeping up with that. That's part of self-awareness, seeing the good and the not so good. Part of self-awareness is being able to see how you are in the world too. How are you in your relationships? How are you in your professional life? How are you with friends? And how are you with family? How are you as a parent or as a community member? How do you act, and how do people respond to you? That's part of awareness, being willing to say, I want to know not just what I feel about myself, but I want to know how I'm being perceived out in the world, because I don't want to go around hurting people or engaging in behaviors that are not what I want for myself. I want to be the best I can be. And part of that is accepting feedback from other people, which can be really hard. But it's a great exercise to do, to help others, let others give some input into who they see you to be, to see what do they see as your strengths and weaknesses. There's an exercise you can do if you're up for it. I did this when I was back in graduate school, where you select 3 friends or family members, 3 people that know you pretty well and that you'd like some feedback from. And then you honestly ask them, what do you see as my 3 biggest strengths or my 3 biggest weaknesses? Or you could say, what are the 3 things you like the best about me, and the 3 things you don't really like that much about me? And I did this, and I remember one friend and I going for a walk around a park, and she was very honest, and she told me at the time that I talked too much about my job as a psychologist, and that she felt like I was kind of bragging about it because I was in graduate school. And but she said some very kind and loving things to me. The 3 things she loved were really great things, and they helped me see some new strengths, but it also opened my eyes to maybe I am acting this way, and maybe I don't want to be this kind of person that does this. So it actually made me change. So if you're willing and you're courageous, go ahead and try that exercise for self-awareness too. But really it's just about seeing yourself, seeing the true you, all the parts, all the bits and pieces, and then we work on accepting and loving those things. And that's the next step, which is self-acceptance. I find self-acceptance to be the most challenging for pretty much everybody. That's the one where we spend the most time when I'm doing this kind of therapy work with clients. We spend a lot of time on self-acceptance for some people. Some people are able to sort of take all the parts of oneself and go, this is me, this is who I am, and I love myself and I accept myself, and that's it. But most of us aren't able to do that. For most of us, it's more of a piecemeal approach of, well, I accept these things and I don't really think I accept those things. And we might accept some weaknesses and not accept our strengths, or vice versa. Or we might be able to accept some of both but not all. The thing with self-acceptance is it's pretty much an unconditional thing. It has to be all or nothing. We can't just, we're not really truly accepting ourselves if we only say, I only accept this part of myself, but not this. We can't put conditions on it. It needs to be unconditional. Another part of self-acceptance is that it's a choice. And what I find is I've been looking for that magic solution to help people learn to really accept themselves. I wish I could just tell you, this is what you do. Step 1, step 2, step 3, you'll accept yourself, no problem. well, that's not how this works. This is a process. Actually, that's another thing. It's unconditional. It's a process. It takes time. This is a lifelong process that you'll revisit hopefully over and over if you're continuing to choose to grow throughout your life. And as you see new parts of yourself, if you get put into new situations and given new circumstances and trials and all these things, you see new things come out in yourself, and you have to once again go, I'm aware of that. I see it. Can I accept it? And number 3, like I said, self-acceptance is a choice. And the way I see it, it's a daily, sometimes minute by minute, sometimes hour by hour choice of, I see this in me and I'm going to accept it. Now, acceptance does not mean I love this about myself now. I accept it, so that means I like it. No, you don't have to like it. So acceptance is not liking it. Acceptance is not saying, well, I guess this is just how I am, I'll never change. That's not it either. It's not, in fact, acceptance isn't really, it doesn't really involve judgment. It's more about, I see it and this is where I am. This is how I am right now. This is where I am in my life. This is what's happening. We talked in one of the earlier lessons about accepting what is, and self-acceptance is the same thing. It's accepting what is about you in your life and how and who you are. And so sometimes that has to happen over and over. That the things we struggle to accept, we work on choosing to accept it in the moment. When we see it again and we feel like, oh, I don't like that, and we start fighting ourselves over it, over that thing we don't like about ourselves, it causes us so much trouble and distress. And instead, we have to work on saying in our mind, I need to accept this, and I'm going to accept it. Okay, this is how I am. I see it. I accept it. This is how I am. Then we can work on lovingly changing the things we want to change instead of fighting ourselves over these things and beating ourselves up and being really harsh on ourselves because we don't like what we see. So self-awareness is first, and then self-acceptance. And there's a lot of great resources on my website for each of these to help you work on them. And then we have self-love, which we've been talking about self-love this whole time. But the important thing to remember is that self-love it can look different in different times of your life. There are a lot of ways to love yourself. So how do we love ourselves? Well, for one, it includes self-care. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of your needs? The things that you need to be healthy and strong? Are you taking care of some of your wants and your wishes and your desires? Are you dreaming? Now, we talked earlier, we read some great words from Eric Froman here about how when we are happy, then we teach our children to be happy in life, and that motherly love is both taking care of needs and also developing wants and desires in ourselves so we can be the example and share that for our children. Now, if you're not a parent, the same goes for any of us, even if you're not a parent, that we need to develop ourselves. Not just, self-care is not just being just baseline healthy. It's really working on that flourishing that we've been talking about and being willing to keep on working and growing as we've been discussing in all of these. So self-care is one part of self-love. Another part of self-love is self-kindness. This is just doing kind things for you. Think about this. If you had a best friend that was in need, what would you do to be kind to them? What kind of kind things do you like to do for other people? Do you like to take them out? Do you like to go and spend time with them? Do you like to do something nice for them? What do you like to do? And then do that to yourself. Have a bath if you like that. Go for a hike if you like to do that. Get together with friends. You can be kind in your mind. When you are having a hard time, you can say kind things like, you know what, it's okay. This is okay. I messed up, but that's okay. And that leads us into self-compassion, which is similar to self-kindness, but it's really that compassion. If you have compassion for other people, they're going through something, you don't say, well, get up and get over it. But we do that to ourselves, don't we? We tend to be really harsh with ourselves sometimes. And compassion for ourselves is part of self-love because it's saying, it's okay that I messed up. I'm okay. It's going to be fine, and sort of imagining you giving yourself a hug. Like, it's okay, I love you. I love you no matter what you do, and we're going to get through this, me and myself and I, right? And so this self-kindness, self-love, and self-compassion are all parts of self-kindness, compassion and self-care are all parts of self-love. And then you add in your relationship with others. Loving other people and letting them love you is also a big part of self-love. And And you can check out more about that topic on my website for more ideas for how to practice self-love. But think about how you're doing in those different areas and look for ways to improve and grow in those different ways. And if we have all these things, if we have self-awareness and self-acceptance and some self-love, and we're doing some kind and compassionate and caring things for ourselves, then we start to really feel self-worth. And to me, that's where our love of God comes in, because we start to see and feel this potential that we have. We all have it. This potential that we have to be more than we think we are, to be as God sees us. And I love the quote by C.S. Lewis, and I wish I had it written down so I could read it to you, but from Mere Christianity, and he talks about how we think we're being made into a little cottage, but God is building a palace, and he intends to come and live in it himself. And we can be a palace. We sometimes hold ourselves back, but this part of letting God love us and loving God is believing in ourselves and believing that there is more to us than what our little minds can understand, and believing that this higher power, this greater being knows all and can help us and sees our potential, and we try to see ourselves as God sees us and to love ourselves as God loves us. And we open our hearts. Again, opening. We talked a lot about that in our very last lesson about opening our hearts. We open and we let God's love come in for us, and that is self-worth. When we feel God's love for us, when we feel that love, and even if you don't believe in God, you surely, if you're choosing to grow, have felt that love in the universe, that great, powerful love that is in all things. That's what we're talking about. You open up, you receive that, you let it come in, and you let it fill you, and then you can't help but love yourself and other people, and that is true self-worth. I'm sure we could talk about this topic all day long, but we need to wrap up. And so let me get to the assignment part of things. First of all, visit my website and the blog posts on drchristinahibbert.com for the posts on self-worth, because like I said before, they have very specific tools and exercises you can do to help you grow in the different areas of self-worth. Secondly, really ponder this idea that we talked about today of self-love, and ask yourself, how am I doing in self-love? Am I really allowing myself to feel and experience love? Do I have a block somewhere? Do I have a block from my love from God, from myself, from other people? And in what ways do I need to grow in love? And finally, you can just choose to think about any of the principles we've talked about today and set any kind of a goal to get you working on your own path to self-love and self-worth. That might include working on self-care, or it might include working on self-compassion, being kinder to yourself. It might include just pondering how things are going in your life and just trying to improve your relationships with other people so that you can receive more love into your life. Whatever it is, choose one thing and start today, even if it's just setting the goal to get started today. But do one thing today. To wrap up, I just want to read one final quote by Meister Eckhart from a long, long time ago, but it's fabulous. He says, "If you love yourself, you love everybody else as you do yourself. As long as you love another person less than you love yourself, you will not really succeed in loving yourself. But if you love all alike, including yourself, you will love them as one person, and that person is both God and man. Thus he is a great and righteous person who, loving himself, loves all others equally." Now I hope you will join us again here for our This Is How We Grow personal growth group, and on my website at drchristinahibbert.com, and we'll see you next time for lesson number 8. Bye everybody.